Welcome to Discovering. Tonight we'll finish up our bee season with a look at how the honey gets from the hive to the jar.
So this is the first of this year's honey being bottled.
And we'll get a lesson on the amazing life of bees. Then we'll pay a visit to Carp River Garden. Stick around, it's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
We started with a look at a unique way to overwinter bees.
A member of our club, Northwoods Beekeepers, for 5 years has been keeping his bees in a styrofoam box. The big difference is that we are able to, by taking the lid off, go down and check on the bees, can actually see them, and we can feed them without disturbing them. Conventional beekeeping, you have to disturb them by opening the boxes.
We checked back in for a spring checkup.
Now we got to take this bee box off, see how strong they are, and see if the queen's laying, and readjust them and clean the hives.
We watched as a new beekeeper installed his first bees.
There's 9,500 bees per pound.
We've split hives, learned about a mite inspection, and got a look at the beekeeper collecting his share of the honey.
I'll take this off, and I'll take that box off, and I set it over on my platform here, and then I use a bee brush to brush them off.
Now it's time to extract the honey and put it in bottles. But before we do, here's Bernie the beekeeper with the story of the amazing life of bees.
In the honey bees, you have the queen bee, which is, she kind of is the heart of the hive. She hatches just like all the other bees, except she's in a special cell that's different than the other bees. It's a much larger, and she's fed royal jelly all until they seal her off after 9 days. Now, worker bees, they get royal jelly for 3 days, and then they get bee bread, which is a little coarser food, and then they get capped after 9 days also. But they're in a smaller cell, and they become a worker. So the queen is the heart of it. She lays 2,000 eggs a day, or up to 2,000. Sometimes some people say more. She dictates what kind of a temperament you're going to have, how hard of workers they are. Everything comes through her genes. After a number of years, she starts to fail, or if she gets injured, or if she's just kind of a poor queen, her numbers start to drop. And the bees in the hive recognize this. They go and take one of her eggs, or several, and they put them in what they call a superseding cell. It starts out with a little cup in the middle of a frame, and then it'll hang like a little finger. And they keep feeding that egg, or eggs, depending on how many they do, royal jelly. They'll seal it off, that's capped off. 19 days after the egg is hatched, it'll hatch out of that cell. It lays around for a day, and then it goes out at mates. Sometimes they'll lay eggs right with mom in that same hive for a while. And then once they get going, mom disappears, and everything, they go up to the 2,000 or better, and everything is fine. When you introduce a queen, I will put the queen in. You put the queen in a cage. Now, the bees in there don't know her. She doesn't smell like them. They're not happy with her, even though they know they're queenless, and they're not happy about that. The way I do it is I give her a couple of days in there, and then I go back in and peel off a little strip that's on the bottom of the box. The box will be about this big, and on the bottom is a candy strip that goes in there. And you peel that off, and I run a little nail through it, like a little fishing nail, to get it started. And you put that all back in, and they'll eat out that candy in 2 days, maybe 3. And now she's been in there at least 3 or 4 days, and they will accept her, hopefully. Sometimes they don't even then. But so it's kind of it's a tricky thing introducing new queens. So the longer she can stay in that box, the better, but you don't want her in there too long. So, but that's what'll happen. They'll, once they accept her, she'll just wander around for a day or so and start laying eggs, and everything will be peachy doing. So as I said, a queen will lay 2,000 or more eggs a day. So she lays all the worker eggs. The workers then hatch, and after they've hatched, they become a house bee or a nurse bee, and they start feeding the larva that's in the, right off the bat, right the same day they hatch. They hatch, they eat a little honey, and they go to work. Then, as they get older, they start to secrete wax out of their abdomen, and within a month, they've gone through that where they've been a house bee, they help clean. They get to the point where they become a field bee. Now the field bee is the one that goes out and collects the nectar and the pollen. A scout bee finds a source, comes back and tells the hive, hey, down the road so many yards is, or a mile, they go up to 2 miles, is this source of nectar or honey or both. And they do that through the bee dance. It's a circle with a shake in it and a bisect, and that all has, they make a circle and they cut diagonally through that circle. That tells those bees around them what direction and how far in relations to the sun and the hive the source of nectar or pollen is. Now some bees will bring in pollen only, some will bring in nectar only, some will bring in both nectar and pollen. So off they go and they get that that source of nectar and pollen, and they bring it back to the hive. The pollen's used for baby bees and for raising the brood. The nectar goes back to a house bee who puts it into a sac. The enzymes, and this isn't their stomach, you hear this, it goes in their stomach, it's not their stomach, it goes into a special sac. The enzymes attack it and turn it into honey, and then it's placed in a cell. Then the cell is filled up. The worker bees inside the hive, the house bees yet, are fanning inside to dry it out from 80 or 90% water down to 16%. And they know this. When it gets to the right percent, they cap it off with a nice thin film of white wax. That's called cappings. The drone, which is the male bee, his job is to breed with any queen when she's out flying. So that what the drone does is he spends his life doing nothing but going out to the corner looking for girls. Now, somehow they're created so that when a drone and a queen, even from this hive or any other hive, know exactly where to go to meet for mating. Now, you could have 100 drones up there. She'll mate with anywhere from 15 to 25 drones that'll mate with her. Most of our drones, 98 or 97%, will never mate. They're just there in case. Drones come back every day, and on nasty days, they stay home. Nice sunny day, they go out and look for a queen. At the end of the season, when we get close to our first frost, the drones get booted out. They drag the drones out. 2 bees will grab a hold of them and pull them out. And the guard bees will stand at the entrance and not allow them to come in. And guard bees, again, are just before they become field bees. So that's the baby bee. When they work their way through, they become guard bees. They watch the entrance. They don't allow other bees from other hives to come in. They don't allow bumblebees to come in. And they don't allow drones to come back. Once they're booted out, they're out. And so that's it for the drones. It takes 12 honeybees, the life of 12 honeybees, to produce 1 teaspoon of honey. So that's why you need so many of them. You get 60,000 or 70,000 bees in a hive when the honey flows are going, because it takes a lot of bees to get that much honey, for me to get honey and to get 100 pounds of honey for them. Now, when they're doing this, they go out on a flight. They're going to visit 50 to 100 flowers per flight. That's about 1 million flowers in a lifetime. So without pollinators like honeybees, a lot of flowers wouldn't get pollinated. A lot of food and vegetables wouldn't get pollinated. Our basswood trees would not get pollinated like they do with honeybees. There's just not enough other pollinators out there. So it's, that's one of the importance. 80% of the flowers in the world need to be pollinated by a pollinator. And that isn't all just honeybees. It can be a butterfly, it can be a bumblebee, it can be a mason bee. There's a whole host of insects out there that are just dying to pollinate because it's part of their nature. It's the way they were created. Go out there and get that pollen and nectar, and by doing so, they replenish themselves and they allow the flower or the fruit tree or the vegetable, whatever, to produce a fruit and continue to grow.
The last we checked in on Bernie, he removed the honey-saturated frames from the hives. It's now time to remove the honey from the frames.
What I'm going to do is just take the caps off here, and that's the wax that the bees put on to keep the honey inside the cell. And so when I do this, I can now get the honey to extract out. And there's a variety of ways of doing this. Whoops, this is a hot knife, electric hot knife. This is a roller, so if I miss one or two cells or even a bunch, I can roll like this, and it opens it up. You gotta get at the honey. This is what the color that you look for, is a nice white. So we're gonna open these up as much as we can. Another way is using a scratcher. The scratcher leaves more chips of wax, then they get caught in the filter, so we have trouble filtering. And so I catch it from my wife. So we tried this roller this year, and it works out real well. There you go. Wow, this one's got brood in it too. And this is drone brood because it's bulging way out. And of course the drone is the male. Somehow the queen got up in here and laid some eggs. And there's a reason I vary these. If I used a hot knife on here, I wouldn't be able to get it all right. So one more. You can see this is all nice and shiny. It's ready to be capped. They just didn't have time to cap it. The little cappings that's on here, I'll just break those up with the roller. And the same on this side. These are pretty full. Otherwise, it's called green honey. It's not down to 16% water. And you only want 10% green honey in there. Now, if it's green, you can take it and shake it, and it'll squirt out. That tells you it's green honey. This stuff looks like it's right close to capping, so it should be okay because they're already capping this. But I watch for that. You never want more than 10% in your honey batch, or it could ferment on you. The wax down here is now filtering. There's holes in this tub. This is a two-piece tub. The holes allow the honey to work its way down, and it'll fill this bottom container, which has a gate valve on. We run it through a filter, then bottle it. It'll sit in the house for a couple of days to get it all drained down. Then we take the wax out of here. I heat it up and melt it. Out of that, I'll probably get maybe another quart of honey. Then the wax is taken and put into a double boiler again. It gets filtered. Then it goes into a crock pot where it sits for 48 hours liquid. And that allows the molecules to all settle to the bottom. Any debris that I missed in my filtering is going to be on the bottom. Turn it off. Let it harden up. The next day you flip it over, scrape off the bottom. It's called beekeeper wax. Beekeeper wax is not ready for candles, but it can be used for a whole variety of other things, like salves, waterproofing things. So it can be used for a whole host of things. And then we can start making candles. Good to go? Okay, this is our new electric extractor. It's the first year we're using it. It's an 8-frame. It's called a radio extractor. You put the frame in and they spin like this, and the honey comes out of both sides at once. What we're doing here now is we're extracting the honey. So you put it in like this, and then it actually pulled out centrifugally, runs down. We just light filter, we don't heat. Our honey is always considered raw honey because it's unprocessed. We filter out the wax particles, we filter out the wings and the legs, and any other debris that's in the honey, and then it goes in the house for bottling. This container is a 5-gallon bottling bucket. It has a gate valve on the bottom so you can bottle right from the container. Now when we bottle this, you like it to set so the air bubbles all come to the surface. Set overnight, and the air bubbles will come right up to the top. But today, just so that you can see how the bottling works, we'll bottle some, and there might be a few air bubbles in it. This is such a white honey this year. It's just beautiful. Really happy with it. Hopefully we get bunches. So this is the first of this year's honey being bottled. We're going into pint jars now. We have 2-pounders and pint jars this year, and then eventually we're all going to all mason jars. We have some nice 7-pound. Now they look a little hazy, and that's because of all the air in them. Once they set for the night, you come out here tomorrow morning, these things will be crystal clear. The finest honey in the world.
About 15 minutes west of Marquette, near Negaunee, on Heritage Road, you'll find a little piece of botanical paradise known as Carp River Garden. Let's take a walk.
We discovered the property, 30-some years ago, and we were living in Ishpeming, and it looked interesting, and Jim talked to the owner, and he ended up purchasing it.
We were looking for a place where we could make
A camp.
a big garden.
We actually cut the trees, built our house out of the trees we cut here, and then we had stumps and mountains of debris, and it sort of evolved from there.
We had a guy come in with a bulldozer, and we told him just to make a park out of the area there, and he did real well. We told him we wanted some large flower beds, and he gouged out basically the first pond there, and then that was before we built the house.
It revolved around the big pine trees, these pillars, and the terrain and the rocks and the landscape. That's how it evolved.
Yeah, and it did evolve over the years. It got bigger, and it
started in the center there.
And then we just moved west with it as we bought more property behind us, and that enabled us to go back a little further. And we've been here 33 years.
When you start something like this, you think, what is this going to look like in 33 years, And then here it is.
Yeah. There's always work to do. It's, every day probably 3 or 4 hours each of us, or more.
There's only a short window of opportunity to garden in the summertime, and you got to take advantage of it.
Over the span of time, we've built pretty good ecology here. There's a lot of wildlife and birds. We like and enjoy the birds through the winter. They're pileated, and we get otters on the river, and every once in a while we'll see a pine marten or a bear, and so it's kind of fun. But we're only 3 miles from town. We're open to the public except when we have a wedding on Saturdays usually.
Well, we rent the garden out for events, and most of the time they're weddings and mostly Saturdays.
But a lot of different groups come. They're Chocolate Township seniors, Gwynn seniors, things like that. And sometimes, special gardening groups come and so on. Both my maternal and paternal grandparents and mom and dad were gardeners. And I just kind of grew up with it and just kept doing it.
I'm an artist, and I just feel compelled to do this stuff. So I garden in the summertime, and I have a painting studio in the wintertime. So I just feel, like I have to do what an artist does. Why? I don't know. That's how that works. But yeah, in the summer it's the garden, in the winter. And then you step back and say, hey, that worked,
Well, that's it for this week. Be sure to check out 906outdoors.com, where you'll find the 906 Fishing Report, TV6 weather, shopping, and more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next week, right here on Upper Michigan's very own Discovering.